My name is Ashley, and today I have a lovely guest, Stanley, who will introduce herself a little bit later, but I'll just run through a little bit of intro. So Beyond the Mark, I created Beyond the Mark. It's a bit of a sports blog about a couple of years ago, and it tries to focus on athletes and administrators' personal stories on top of their sporting success. So sort of a side passion project, and I've been really fortunate to get Anna on the blog to just talk about her experience with netball and now into commentary. And just a little bit of a disclaimer, Anna also happens to be my lovely sister-in-law.
Only sister-in-law.
She married my awesome brother Jeremy. So with that, I'll just pass it on to Anne, and she can tell us a little bit about herself.
So, well, you know most about me, but yeah, Anna Stanley, of course married Ashley's big brother, got 3 kids, played netball for the Silver Ferns all of my 20s, got in at 18, retired at 30, went to 3 World Cups, 2 Commonwealth Games, finally won a gold medal in both the World Cup and the Com Games in my very last ones. So it took me quite a few times to get there. And then at 30, I decided I'd had enough and wanted to be a mum, and then had 3 kids who are now all heavily active, and I run around after them.
With that, with all your experience and your lessons that you've played, obviously said 18 to 30, what kind of lessons or experiences would you pass on to aspiring netballers or athletes in general?
Oh, that's a big question. Probably the biggest attributes that you'd need to make it in the top, I think, first and foremost, is to have a passion for what you do. So no matter whether it's in sport or your career, if you want to get to the top, you've got to find what your passion is. And so for me, early on, it was evident that it was sport and then netball. So I think passion's the big one. I think you've got to have a huge amount of work ethic in sport if you want to make it to the top. You know, there's a lot of people that say we should be praising work rate as opposed to, you know, winning and all those sorts of things. So the most talented athletes in the world are the ones that work the hardest. So I think that's a big one. Work ethic is huge if you want to make it. And I think in this day and age, being resilient is a big one. Yeah. I think it's important that we teach our young kids that it's okay to fail. Yeah. It's how you bounce back from those disappointments and those challenging times that will set you apart from anyone else, and often that's where you make the most learning, is when you lose or get setbacks. So I think being resilient is important, and probably the last one is just being your authentic self, I think, as an athlete, not trying to be somebody else. We've just obviously had Maria Folau retire from the Silver Ferns, and she'll go down as probably being one of our best shooters to ever wear the black dress. And while she's probably inspired a generation of young shooters, which I'm sure she has, it's important that those young ones are wanting to perhaps be better than Maria and be their own best versions of themselves. And I think that's really important. That's what coaches love, is people coming in and being themselves, and everyone has different skill sets. So I think embracing your individuality as an athlete is important.
Is it something that you were able to express when you were growing up, obviously with your mum also representing New Zealand in the Silver Ferns? Is that something that you were able to see firsthand, and is it something that you pass on to your own 3 kids?
Yeah, so I guess it was, you know, being brought up in a family with 4 girls and 2 parents that were very active, and obviously a mother that played to a high level in the sport that I played, it was sort of a natural progression that I'd move into netball. She was a defender, I was a mid-quarter, so I never felt that I was having to be the same as my mum. I sort of carved my own way. And now I guess with having 3 kids myself, I guess Jeremy and I find ourselves in a position as parents that not many parents around New Zealand would find themselves in, because our kids have both parents who represented New Zealand at a national level, with both parents themselves that represented New Zealand at a national level. So I can't think of anyone that actually would be in that position. So it's quite hard for Jeremy and I at the moment to navigate how we work that with our kids, because just by default, our kids feel that pressure and have that expectation. Not that we place that on our kids, but naturally they go, Mum and Dad played for the Silver Ferns for the All Blacks, Granby and Gramps played for the Silver Ferns and All Blacks. Does that mean that we have to? So I think, we're still working out how we do that, and sometimes people may think that we're not supporting our kids because we don't go to all our kids' sports games, because when we are there, naturally they feel the pressure because of who we are. So sometimes Jeremy and I both go, okay, we'll just step back and they can go on their own and learn to navigate without Mum and Dad being there. And that's how we're sort of working that at the moment.
Do you ever feel like you are repeating or kind of encouraging the same kinds of behaviours that you picked up and Jeremy picked up when you were younger? Like, so with Jaya and Nico and that, do you feel like you do the same things that Granby used to do, or a little bit different, like navigating? What does it actually look like navigating those kinds of spaces?
It's so hard because I coach Jaya with netball, and so that adds a completely new element. She's only ever had me as a coach, and so I've had to, after games, sort of separate the mum and the coach. So that's been quite difficult, and this year I've had to go, right, that's it, I'm not coaching anymore, she needs to listen to someone else. I think Jeremy and I are both on the same page that, you know, when we get in the car after our kids play sport, it's all about praising their work ethic and their attitude and all those sorts of things, as opposed to the result, because we want them to keep improving, we want them to stay in the sport, and it's not all about winning at this age. So we're trying to push the things that, you know, research says we should be pushing, and at this stage, you know, they're all still enjoying their sport and loving it, which is the key.
Do you then have, like, so, you know, the advice for the aspiring athletes, the kind of skills and characteristics that they need, what kind of key points do you think the support people or the parents or the caregivers of potential elite athletes should be told, or you know, no one today?
So I think that the big one in this day and age is that early specialisation in sport doesn't mean that you're going to be an elite athlete in the future. In fact, research says that it could have, you know, the opposite effect, and that, you know, if kids are specialising too early in sport, that they run the risk of getting overuse injuries and burnout. So as a parent, as a coach, as an administrator in sport, I think that's the key one that I'd be pushing, that we want our kids to be involved in a range of sports, because ultimately that will benefit the one sport that they choose to specialise in later on in life. So it's about enjoying all sorts of sports and not specialising too early. And I think, you know, that's a big one, especially in this day and age and this generation where kids are exposed to sport at a younger age. There's so much more on offer. Parents, I think certain parents can start to compete with each other. If little Charlie Ray's involved in 3 different club teams for rugby, then my son should be in 3 different club teams. So it becomes a bit of a competition between parents at the detriment to that kid. And research says that, you know, if kids are enjoying sport and playing when they're young, then they're going to become active adults, and that's what we want, a generation of active adults, because that's going to increase our workforce, and there's lots of obviously positive benefits from that.
Like, talking about that and like the research and stuff, with, you know, working currently in like an athlete development kind of space, do you ever feel pressured, or have you ever had to like remind certain supporters or parents, like, actually research says this, if they are kind of showing kind of signs of that might not be supportive? Yep,
absolutely. Nearly do it on a daily basis, my job. So I work at a school and I work with athletes on athlete development. So I run the mentoring side of the program. So I teach kids on how to get the best out of themselves as an athlete. So I've made up the program. I talk a lot about dealing with disappointment, mental health. I do nutrition. goal setting, a lot of it on resilience and character values. It's all about building the athlete, building the person, and then you'll be a better athlete, right? Yeah. So it's sort of getting the better people make better athletes sort of philosophy. That's sort of how we roll. And I think, that's hugely important because we are seeing a big dropout in sort of 15 to 18, that 15 to 18 age gap of kids dropping out of school because they've burnt out, they're doing too much too soon. Yeah. And so a big part of my job is educating the parents on how much is too much. Yeah. And that at the end of the day, you just want your kids to stay involved in sport and enjoying sport and not living vicariously through your children. And we see that a lot as well. Let your kids be kids. Yeah. Just because you didn't make it in sport doesn't mean you have to live your life through your children.
I would say, what have you found are the common challenges or myths that parents or supporters have of their kids that are wanting to become super elite athletes?
Well, I think they look at them and think, because little Charlie Ray's in the top team at school, that means that they're going to be an elite athlete. Yeah. And research again says that 0.3 to 0.5% of kids will ever be a professional athlete. So the chances are not many of us get there. And there's no such thing as an elite 13-year-old. Again, parents have this perception if they're in the top rep team or this and that that should define who they are. Yeah. And if they're in a talented team, what does talent mean? Just because you're in this team now doesn't mean to say you're going to be in the top netball team, basketball team as an adult. So we don't want to pigeonhole our athletes too soon. And you see a lot of programs, netball, rugby on the shore have scrapped away with, development rep teams, which I'm a huge advocate for because again, that places so much kudos on those athletes, and again, parents get it in their head that if they're in the under 13 rep team, that means they're going to make it, and they put pressure on their children, and the expectations are higher, and they're the kids that I can guarantee will not be playing that sport in 10 years' time. So I'm a big believer that athletes and kids develop at different stages, and just because you're good at 13 doesn't mean to say you're going to be good at 30. And I think that can be quite difficult at times for Jeremy and I because we kind of sit outside that. I made the Silver Ferns at 18. Yeah. Obviously, Jeremy made it very early, so we're kind of not the norm.
Yeah. Super couple.
Yeah. Super couple. When often, when parents say, but you did this, and my athletes go, but you did that, and I keep having to say, it's kind of the average age of people most making it in sport is 26. That's what the research says. So for me and Jal, we're a bit below
an
that.
Exception. Yeah. So the transition period between, because how old are the kids that you deal with at the moment?
So they are year 8 to 10, 12 to 15.
Okay, so they're in the bracket of you're still wanting to encourage play, and then it's probably around 15, 18 that you kind of start to specialise or at least kind of hone into one sport. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and also we're finding that at that age between 12 and 15 that, if kids are playing water polo or netball or hockey, which is strong at my school, that it's not just one team they're in the school water polo team, they're in 2 club water polo teams, they're then in, rep water polo teams. So it's that overload in that one sport, and it's where clubs and schools aren't working together for the benefit of the children, and that's been a problem in New Zealand for a long time, and no one knows quite how to answer that because schools are wanting to get the best out of their athletes, clubs are wanting to get the best out of their athletes, but yet the two really need to work together to ensure that we keep kids, in sport. Yeah,
it's kind of funny though to hear it. If you've referenced researched quite a bit, and you kind of just show them the research to say, look, we're overworking our kids essentially. Probably not the best way to do it, and even then people and organisations are still putting through athlete development pathways. Not saying that they're all bad, just there's a certain time and certain place for certain skills to be taught along that
And I think we're really only touching the surface when it comes to athlete development and how much is too much. And I think we're slowly starting to see changes, but it's going to take a long time, and it's going to need a lot of national sporting organisations, schools, clubs working together to ensure we get the right message out. In fact, Sport New Zealand in the last week have just come up with a big campaign calling it, I think it's Keep Up.
Yeah.
And it shows it's all about how many kids are dropping out in sport because, you know, they're doing too much. And it's a great resource for parents, coaches and administrators. If you go online, Sport New Zealand Keep Up, it's all there. It gives parents and coaches tips on what they should be, focusing on with youth athletes.
Okay, cool. With the recent Halberg Awards that you guys went to, I was wondering, with the Silver Ferns pretty much taking like a clean sweep, was there kind of any memories, or were you kind of reminiscing about, did it bring back what it was like for you to be able to play at that level and those kind of achievements? Yeah,
well, obviously the last time the Silver Ferns won the Halbergs was when my team won it back in 2004, I think. So it was a long time ago, and well, for one, we were sitting at the table next to the Silver Ferns and they were all drinking waters because they were all on contract. Well, back 16 years ago, we weren't drinking waters. A little bit's changed. They're a little bit more professional. But it's so nice to go to events like that because it does bring back, I guess, all the memories of what you achieved and how long you achieved it for, and the great friendships that you have managed to maintain over those years. And it's times like the Halbergs where you get to reconnect with a lot of those mates of yours. So we actually had, Jeremy and I were sitting next to Irene, and I had to have a little giggle to Jeremy. I said, we're probably sitting next to the loudest person in this room because Irene is very loud. And then next to Irene was actually Yvonne, and she got the Lifetime Achievement Award. And I had one of the camera crew came up to me and just said, look, Yvonne's getting the first award, so make sure, and she doesn't know it, make sure she doesn't get up and go to the toilet or like is talking to anyone else. She needs to be in her seat. So me and Irene were like, for the first award, on guard, making sure that Yvonne was sitting down because she didn't know that she was getting it. So that was quite cool for her.
What were kind of your most memorable moments, like if you were reflecting back on your playing days and being able to make it in the Silver Ferns at 18? What are the kind of big moments for you and your most challenging moments?
The big moments would be, for me, winning the World Cup in 2003 because I had to go to two previous ones and get silver or bronze or wherever. I don't know where those medals are, probably in the bin. And then it took me to my last one to win it, and I was captain, so that added another element to it. So the highs are always the winning moments, but probably when you really reflect back, it's for me, it's all the amazing friendships that I made. Some of my netball mates are my best of friends because, you know, you experience so much together, you train so hard together, you go through so many highs and lows, and, you know, you just get to know your teammates inside and out. So for me, it's probably the friendships that have remained. The most challenging for me was probably rupturing my ACL, the injuries, non-selection. I was actually got dropped from the Silver Ferns for 18 months, and that was when I was teaching at Auckland Girls Grammar, and I thought, what's life after netball? And I was looking at going overseas and teaching in Asia, and then I got back in again, and then literally within a few months I was named captain. So for me, that was quite mentally to get my head around suddenly not being in the team, and then suddenly being named captain and off to a World Cup.
How did you feel, or how did you manage that kind of setback? Because one, how does it feel to get in at 18, an exception, but then also then getting dropped and then coming back and then getting told that you're the captain now? Like, how do you manage that kind of like roller coaster of emotions? Yeah,
well, I think, as I said, one thing that you need if you want to be an elite athlete is you've got to have resilience. And I think throughout it all, I still knew when I got dropped and when I got injured that I knew that I could still give more on the netball court and I could still be a better player. So that's what drove me to keep training, to come back from my injury. The 18 months that I had off, it was about just having fun again. I look back and perhaps I lost a bit of that enjoyment because I was in that intense sort of bubble. And it was about just going back to why you're there initially in the first instance, and that's because you love the sport. So it's just the basics really. It's playing sport because you love it, wanting to improve, and those are the things that sort of got me through those challenging times.
Did you ever experience while you were at the Halberg Awards, Israel Adesanya mentioned in his speech like tall poppy syndrome? Did you ever feel like that while you were playing? Were there ever that kind of people that were wanting to pull you down, especially when you were already down?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. and I think that's in this generation what helps build resilience. I mean, now when you're playing, you've not only got the print media, you've got TV, you've got social media. We never had that nowadays. So I think athletes these days have to be a lot more resilient because there's a lot more written about them. There's a lot more blogs. There's people you've got these keyboard warriors that can just sit behind a keyboard and write whatever they want. So it's important, I think, for athletes not to listen to everything that they read. What was the question? I've forgotten.
Is
where
it just like throwing it down? So like you had people experiencing tall poppy syndrome?
Oh, yeah,
because Israel
poppy.
Adesanya's speech was great, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. He was awesome. Jeremy was like, yeah, love that man. What a photo. We need a photo with that man. It's sad, and it was interesting what Dame Nolene Taurua said when she got up on stage that she's done a few years in Australia in the Sunshine Coast, and she said over there they back their athletes, they back their coaches. If they fail, they get behind them, they support them, and it's just something that us here in New Zealand we're not good at. As soon as a team loses, we thrash them, we find their faults and we knock them down. And, I think we need to do what, as he said, we need to, when you win, when I win, you win, It's about backing them and supporting them. And that stems right through to Sport New Zealand. If a team doesn't do well, suddenly don't drop their funding because that just makes it even more hard for them to get back up. We need to just keep that support train going.
Yeah. Do you think it's, why do you think that is? Do you think it's because we're so, one says that we're such a sporting nation, or do you think it's almost like a lack of understanding that actually, these super athletes that we do see, they're kind of just people like us? Do you think there's that kind of disconnect, or why are we so
hard on our
content
athletes
on bringing everyone down when they're not doing so great? You're not winning the World Cup last year, so
perhaps our emphasis is too much on winning, and we place too much importance on that. And I don't know, but I think because we're a small nation, when we compete at that global level, we want to do well. And I think in the past we have, and certain codes have experienced that. Obviously, rugby and netball, two strong sports when it comes to competing at the top. And so naturally, Kiwis just don't like it when they see a fall from grace.
Yeah. We got to change that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And of course, it starts with the parents, it starts with the coaches, it starts with the administrators. Everyone involved in sport have got to get behind that.
Yeah. You mentioned Dame Nolene Taurua, with the achievements that she's been able to do with the Silver Ferns, turning them around in pretty like under 2 years.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about her, or what do you think she brings to that kind of high performance environment that has managed to get the team back to where they are now?
Yeah, I mean, she did an amazing job, didn't she? I think the biggest thing with Knowles is that she's all about caring for the person and knowing every person in her team individually and getting the best out of that person rather than getting the best out of them as an athlete. She knows what makes them tick, and as a result of knowing that, she gets the best out of them as an athlete as well. But first and foremost, she's all about family, about being the best mentor, coach, friend that she can be for every athlete in her team. And then from that, she's about setting a standard of excellence and building a culture. And I think she said it at the Halbergs, it's not about a culture where you want to go and have barbecues with your teammates. It's a high-performance culture, It's setting expectations and having standards. She came back in and said, if you don't meet these fitness targets, you're not in the Ferns. And we all thought, I wonder if she'll stick to that. And she did, we had Silver Ferns in there that probably in the past would have been picked in teams. Yeah. They didn't meet their fitness target, boom, they were out.
Yeah.
So she came in from the get-go and had standards and expectations, and as a result, players know where they stand and they know what they have to do to get there. And as a result, we saw one of the fittest Silver Fern teams play at a World Cup because she had set the benchmark. And I think when you set the benchmark and you continue to do it, you get a buy-in from the athletes, and she got a buy-in from the 16 in the squad.
Do you think that there'll be a trickle-down effect for the ANZ Premiership? Do you think the New Zealand teams will be a lot stronger because of her influence from the top?
Yeah. And I think it's because not only is she as a coach doing so much at that top level with the Ferns, but she's also working with the ANZ coaches. And so she's all about developing the sport and developing the coaches and giving back. I mean, that's why she's a dame, right? Because she has done so much for our sport. And I think, you know, when you start sharing those ideas and with the ANZ coaches, then that will definitely have a trickle effect in those ANZ teams, because they sort of know what the standards are and what the standards should be at that level.
Would you like to see the compact combined with the Aussie teams, or are you pretty happy with the format as is?
Well, you know, you could argue that we don't need the Aussies because we beat them at the World Cup, right? So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is getting a lot of our ANZ teams fit enough so that the games are fiercely contested. I think we saw 2 bigger margins last year in the ANZ Premiership. That, for one, you don't get a vested interest from the public if the games are really one-sided. You're not going to get people at the games. It's not going to be good for TV rights. It just kind of goes on. So I think we need to I think we're pretty good as a nation at fielding, you know, obviously a Silver Ferns team. Yeah. We need to work at being better at fielding 5 strong ANZ teams. Yeah. And I think the work that Nolene and Debs are doing now at that level, I think we'll start to see those benefits come in this year, perhaps next year, with those ANZ teams getting fitter and being a bit smarter with how they work, how they rest, how they recover. Yeah. Who
do you think, is there a particular team that you're interested in watching like this year, but also a player to watch out for?
I really enjoyed watching Maya Wilson in the recent series, the Northern Series, where they went across over to Manchester, Liverpool. Obviously, with no Maria Folau now, there's a big gap on who can sort of fill that void. And Maya is a young Stars player who everyone was tipping to be, you know, sort of the next big thing. And she just, over the last few years, hasn't been able to really make that step up from ANZ level to Ferns. When she got in the Ferns team, she was often sitting on the bench. When she got out on the court, she'd have 15 minutes, and they often weren't the best 15 minutes. Now with Folau gone, I think in the last series we saw she got more opportunities. She's done a hell of a lot of work on her fitness. She's looking strong, and I am looking forward to seeing how that pans out in this year's ANZ. She'll take on probably a lot more of a leadership role, and she's certainly one to watch.
Okay, I'm just having a little look at my last, because I think we might actually kind of nearly wrap up. Oh, no, I have a couple more actually questions. Staying with netball, did you ever think about coaching?
Well, I think you're kind of either a coach or not. I like coaching at the sort of secondary school level because I think you can make a real impact. But I sort of feel now as a mother of a daughter that plays, if I'm coaching, I sort of feel, well, I might as well be coaching her team if I'm going to be going down, because then if I'm not going to be able to watch her play. But then I've coached her for 5 years now and she needs to listen to someone else. So I'm actually just going to enjoy this year not coaching and just going down and watching her play. Yeah. And then perhaps as our kids get older, I may get back into it. But I don't have any aspirations to coach to a extremely high level. I wouldn't mind doing a bit of specialised coaching at times, but I know I don't have any great desire to coach.
There you go. Anyone looking for an awesome coach, Anna will help you if you tweet her.
Just little one-off sessions. I'm quite happy with that.
What do you like doing on the outside? So if we talk about netball, like it's been quite all-encompassing in your life, what are your kind of interests or outside of netball?
Oh gosh, apart from my 3 kids running around after them, we love going up to the beach in Omaha and going boating, fishing, spending time in the outdoors. Sort of this year wanting to sort of do a few more sort of adventure runs. I just did the root burn last year. I did Spring Challenge. It's just unfortunate that my husband has got a dungy knee and walks 500 metres and whinges and moans for the next 2 days.
ACL. He's got like something wrong with it.
It's arthritic. I've done ACL too. Mine's quite not as bad as him, but he's just like, no, can't go.
And as a super athlete, even past netball, she like runs and has abs even after like 3 kids. She's super fit still. So that's why she likes doing everything outside of.
Yeah, I'd like to keep fit. I went to the gym this morning, did a bit of boxing.
Good.
And I think it's really important to be role models to your kids. And, you know, I want them growing up seeing mum and dad being active, because
Yeah.
I think that's important. And I think there's a fine line between, as parents, guiding and steering your kids into sport, which I think every parent should do, and pushing your kids too much. And so I think it's really important that we are guiding and being role models for our kids, and because that's obviously how I got involved in sport. You know, my parents were both phys ed teachers. They were both heavily involved in sport themselves, and I grew up thinking and knowing that was everything. So naturally, me and my sisters got into sport. So I think that's really important as well.
It's the whole thing, right, that we're trying to encourage. It's lifelong being active, like throughout your whole entire life, not just for a little period where you're being a super athlete and then you're not. So it's trying to encourage like the population and your own kids, so you don't have to strive to be in the Silver Ferns, but just the kind of 30 minutes, 30 minutes a day, push play. It's all you need to stay on top of your health, that kind, with other factors. But with that, I think I'm going to start wrapping it up for the formal part, but I do have like a quick fire question round. I know Anne's didn't know any of this, so let's see what her question, like her responses are for the thing. So 10 or so questions, real quick. That's the whole point. They're not as like serious as a netball and athlete development kind of questions. So I'll have a look at my cool Tuhi stationary daily planner, which is super awesome. So to kick off. Actually, this is probably a little bit of a heavy one. Who do you look for inspiration?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Just to kick off the quick fire
Who
round.
I look for inspiration. Just a lot of my friends. A lot of my friends are amazing and do great things. They work, they're mums, they're busy, and what they provide for their families is pretty inspiring. Yeah,
cool. Who's your favourite netballer and why?
Growing up, it was Sandra Edge. Wanted to be Sandy. She was probably one of our best mid-quarters. And when I first made the Silver Ferns, I got in the team with her, so that was pretty cool. And I roomed with her the very first time, and we missed our training the very first session. I was like, Sandy, we slept in. I was like, I idolised you, and you made me miss my first session. So that's kind of a bit of a standard joke with me and Sandy, that I loved her for so long, and then I got on the team with her, and then we missed our first session.
What about today's? Any netballers today?
Today's that I admire. Look, Langman's got an amazing work ethic. Falau had great accuracy. Katrina Rory has shown a huge amount of resilience, getting dropped, getting back in. So, lots of players.
Cool. Favourite movie and why?
I love The Notebook, because it's just such a love story. And Gosling's pretty hot. But I also love Life is Beautiful. That was one of my favourite ones, just the message of... The subtitle. The subtitle one, the French one.
That was
pretty sad but beautiful. Yeah.
Told in a beautiful way, even as horrific as it was for the events. Favourite place in the world and why?
Africa. Ooh. Because Jeremy and I did one of our best trips around Africa, pre-children. We did a truck trip around Uganda, Rwanda, slept in a tent in the Serengeti, did the gorillas in Rwanda. Yeah, we were sleeping in a tent. The lions were roaring around us, and my husband was pushing me closer to the edge of the tent because he was scared.
That's good.
Husband.
That sounds like him.
Yeah.
Sounds like him to a T. Talking about husbands, perfect date.
Perfect date. We don't get to go out on many dates these days. A perfect date would just be actually just sometimes just a night in with us, kids in bed, watching a movie together, getting good old Uber Eats, not having to cook. Yeah. It's pretty simple.
DVD and goodie nights. Yeah. How do you, this is probably a heavy one too, which isn't really a quick fire, but still interesting. How do you navigate raising kids in this super hyper social media world?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Well, we've just started having no phones in the bedrooms after 8 o'clock. Ooh. So did you enforce that policy when you came and babysat my children on the weekend?
I was asking them actually the whole time,
I forgot
what
to tell
does
you
your
that.
mum and dad make? They're like, do I have to do something? Do I have to put you in bed now? What time do you go to sleep? And they're like, no, Auntie Dal, we're fine. We can. And I'm like, okay.
Wet bags. No, 8 o'clock, all phones, devices have to be downstairs, and they're not allowed them in their rooms. And it's been awesome. The biggest thing is when we get up at 6:30 in the morning, I see them and they're all dinging already from friends that are up and on their phones straight away. But obviously my kids are still asleep then, so it's nearly more so to protect them from all the other kids that are texting them and messaging them. So that's been a big one. Obviously, my daughter's on Instagram and she's got Snapchat. We're friends with her on those social media platforms so we can see what she's doing. TikTok as well. We've got them on. I've got Nico's on mine. Jeremy's got Zach's on his, so we can go into their accounts at any point and look and see what they're doing. As soon as we see a TikTok that's got swearing in it or something, delete it, gone. So, we're still navigating that, but I think the biggest thing is just keeping those lines of communication open, always knowing what they're doing and have their phones at the ready.
It's scary. Last couple, three people that you would want to invite to dinner, still with us or no longer with us, and why?
I've just finished reading Michelle Obama's Becoming. So I'd like either Michelle Obama or Barack Obama.
Just casually.
Just what they have done in their field is amazing. So either one of those. Probably Roger Federer. Roger Federer as an athlete. He's one of the greatest tennis players of all. I love his temperament, his composure. He changed as an athlete. He used to be quite a fiery tennis player. He used to get quite angry, and he completely changed his temperament, and I think as a result has become one of the greatest ever. And I love at the age of 34 that he's still playing and still fit and the best that he can. So I'd love to see him. And maybe just because I love music, I love singing. I don't know. We went to Elton John the other day and I was gutted when we had to leave the concert. I was at the one where he got sick, and I had a tear in my eye when he had to get up and go, I just can't give any more. And I felt so sorry for him. But I love a bit of Tiny Dancer. Love a bit of Elton John.
A little.
So should we just say Elton John?
Maybe I've seen Auntie Anne's dancing. Bridges or Ardern?
Oh, God, I'm so not political. I actually really like Ardern, can't stand Bridges.
Yeah. We'll go for that one. Lucky last, one word to describe you.
Oh, God, that's hard, Ashley. I hate these questions.
I know, that's why I left it for the last one.
One word to describe me. Fun?
Yeah.
I don't know, fun?
Yeah.
Let's just keep it simple.
Fun and resilient.
Like to have a good time.
Yeah.
Never too old to have a good time.
You got to see Auntie Anne's dancing. But other than that, that's just a quick wrap up, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming.
No worries.
I've been trying to get Auntie Anne's on the blog for a little while, so I'm really appreciative that she came in for our first one for Switch Aotearoa. So, thank you, Auntie Anne's.
No worries.